So good morning, everybody. This is my pleasure to be here with you, and I have a difficult task. It is to wake you up. So let's try this. So I was asked to talk about what it means to have a human-centric approach to AI and the future of educational work, because we think these are very much interlinked. Actually, that's the very reason why this topic was dealt with, especially in the context of the Digital Economy Working Group, in the context of the G20 presidency of India, because you need to have a perspective that goes actually into different dimensions. So understanding how artificial intelligence might be transforming jobs and skills, and especially now I think we are starting to talk not only about AI per se, but we are talking about specific developments within AI, like generative AI or interactive AI. And by the time you develop, use, and adopt AI of this type, of course it's going to change the way we live. I mean, how many of us have the good habits these days to just write an email without dictating anything? Or how many of us haven't used ChatGPT to go through a report? I mean, I was discussing with a colleague before, like to have a sense of what the report is saying rather than reading it through and having our own assessment. But also it's changing the way we work and the way we produce, of course. And so economies and society are transformed. And this is also because by the time we use these tools, as any other tool we have used in the past, it changes the way in which we do things, we organize production, and ultimately the way we have or not good jobs, and how that impacts on our life and the way we relate to the others. So to this end, and to understand better, what we need to do is actually to map what are the technological developments, what is the diffusion path, because too often it is believed that since a technology exists, it will be used. Well, the answer is no, and past analysis has shown that there are to be in place a number of conditions for technologies to be adopted and used. And this is very useful in order to inform a number of policies, in this case, innovation and industry policies, so how to support the development and how to put this development at the service of society rather than putting society at the service of technologies, as at times it happens. So we also need to understand how AI is shaping the labor market, because by the time we use new technologies, we are not going to do the same tasks that we used to do before. It might be a recombination or just part thereof. And of course, to do that, then we're going to do other things, which means we need to have different skills to embark and be able to do the task we're supposed to perform. And this is going to inform a number of policies, and UNESCO is about informing policies in an inclusive way. So it's going to inform industrial and labor market policies. And then, of course, with that, as I mentioned already, we need to assess what are skills needed in order to perform the tasks that are the ones to be done in the AI and digital era. We used to talk about the digital era, but I think now everything is digital, and we really have to be a bit more specific and talk about what, the transformative technology of the day that is really AI. And this is very important to inform education and training policies, and of course inclusive policies. And at the bottom you see the number of SDGs that informing this policy will have a direct impact towards, which is very important for all the countries around the world. Now, there is a caveat. And what do we mean by human-centric? Well, it means ethical, and ethical is nothing philosophical. It's something that is very real and very concrete, and means respecting always human rights, human dignity, and fundamental freedoms. So knowing what they do with our data, for instance, or how it can be used or it should not be used on the workplace to assess, for instance, our performance. So this is what we mean by human-centric, something that is ethical. But let's see how we go there. So I think that the picture on the left-hand side mirrors a bit the thought, the image that your brain has by the time you talk about AI entering the labor market. It's really about, oh, they're going to substitute me. Well, the answer, I'm an economist, and so very often the answer is depends. But here you have a typical picture of the economist type that is like, it depends. So what you see on this picture is a very nice summary of the assessment that different leading scholars, as a matter of fact, have done in relation to the question, is AI going to make workers redundant? Well, as you can, I'm not going to go into the details, but you can do an analysis that is by occupation. So depending on the tasks that are impacted, whether or not I'd be likely to be substituted in full or in part. And by sector, because of course different sectors have different composition of workers. You don't need as many machine operators in a sector as compared to others. So you have to see how this impact by sectors. So if you have a very quick look at the bars, you realize that expectations are very different depending on the assumptions that are made and depending on the characteristics that it looked like, regardless of the fact that the question here was exactly the same, and is AI going to make workers redundant? So if we think, perhaps, again, this picture mirrors what we think, and we hear very often in the narrative outside, like, oh, but you know, we can't predict the jobs that are going to be out there. So basically, do you mind lowering the voice, please, in the back? The staff people? It's very disturbing. Thank you. No, they don't. Can you tell the gentleman just to lower the voice? So yeah, this is an interactive session, as you can see. So what we were talking here about is really about the fact that by the time you think about what jobs might look like in the future, you think about aliens, something that you can't predict, something you cannot imagine in full, and something that is very difficult to give a shape to. Whereas if you look towards the front, you realize that actually there are some components that will keep there, and the analysis done over time does tell you that story. That is, like, there are some fundamental skills and part of the jobs that will be there, have been there, and have resisted there despite the fact that tasks have been changed and that the skills needed for those tasks also are changed. You see, this is for the package of keeping you awake in the morning. That's exactly what they are doing. So, but if you then ask, okay, what is our ability to predict jobs? Well, and how disruptive will that be? Well, this piece by Author, which is one of the scholars that have most contributed to this literature, is telling you one important thing, and it's like, we are getting very afraid of a question that actually we have answered before. And it's like this picture is showing you that compared to what was the employment, let's say before the middle of the 20th century, to today, basically, the majority of the job had not been foreseen. The majority of the tasks that we will be performing had not been foreseen. And still we're making them, and we have been able to endow the people with the skills needed. Because then what we actually realize is that technologies very often, and actually typically, both augment and substitute people. This has been seen before as well. Of course, what is different about the AI transformation is perhaps the scale of the transformation, the speed, because, I mean, there are several versions of the same, for instance, app several times a year, and the scopes, that is like, what can I do with them? How many productive part of the economy is going to be able to shape? So this study actually is very interesting because they have made assumptions about how or not machine can complement humans. And actually, if you see, and they've grouped it by country level of development of countries, so that it's easier to deal with and see. And what you see in this picture is that, if anything, expectations are that AI is going to augment our capability. The basic argument being that those that are relatively lower skill might benefit a lot from the enhancement coming from this, the potential of AI. And then you might want to look into, say, okay, look, so this is the capability, but then how many people are going to be made redundant? I'm not sure of how many of you have read all this literature that exists since 2010 about automation purely. So we were not talking about AI strictly at that point. But the first study that came out from Oxford was very scary, saying that 46% of the working population was at risk of being made redundant by automation. I mean, imagine half of the workforce all of a sudden erased. The OECD then at that point, and I was there at that point, we started doing work like, the maths don't add. We had to receive, to check the data, etc. And a first remaking of the very same study on different data said 14%. Now, between 46 and 14, it's a whole different story. And then further refinement, checking the accuracy and other characteristics, actually led to 9%. Still, 9% is a huge chunk of the population, is we are going to take it at face value that they are going to be replaced. Mind you, again, with the hypothesis that, in theory, by the time a technology exists, it can be used. The reality is not as such. And we have seen it, again, so many times. But before going that discussion, it's also like, okay, so if I'm going to make redundant, what is really that the market is asking? What is that is, looking for? In this case, we did a study with some colleagues about what are the kind of skills that are demanded on the labor market and whether or not digital intensive, so it's not only based on AI, it's based on the infrastructure, on the ICT infrastructure, on the access, on the services that I purchase. Does it, working with AI or with digital technology, does it imply that you need more skill or less skill? And this talks to the substitution part. Well, the answer that you clearly see here is that digital industries, if anything, are asking from workers greater skill endowment along all the lines and to different extents. So, it makes a lot of sense that basically, for instance, for the level of automation, well, then you need really very good, for instance, marketing and accounting skills not to be automated. So the complement is very highly skilled. And you can see that throughout they are demanded much more. And are they paid more? Well, the answer is yes. So what we saw, we looked at the returns coming from Ceteris Paribus having a set of skills and how much the additional one was adding. Again, around the same skills, so the cognitive and the social emotional skills. And the answer is persistently, we see that there is a top-up. That is, digitally intensive industries tend to pay a top-up. That can be also endogenous in the sense that digital intensive industries typically are also more productive. This means that they can have spare capacity to pay more the workers because they need to be more competitive in the hiring market. But nevertheless, that's the evidence that tells you not only they demand more and better skills, and they're ready to pay them more. So of course they attract the best talent inside the industries. But then which talent are we talking about? So yes, this is a kind of a mirror picture, not really. It's a network of the skills needed for workers that are actually listed as workers working with AI. So we did an analysis of the job posting on the labor market, and based on a study we had done on defining and measuring artificial intelligence developments, we looked for the skills that related to those developments. It's a bit of a, it was a lot of fun to go through. It wasn't a sure thing. But then we got to what is demanded. And what you see clearly in this picture through the circles is that, well, it is very much about the geeks' skills. So, of course, you have to be able to code in Python, to say the least. You have to have knowledge of big data. You have, well, there is Apache that comes here and there. There is a number. Those that are in the business recognize some of the tools they use all the time. It's also a lot about having the ability to research and do analysis, to get the underlying dynamics of processes. So you have the data mining, the data analysis, the understanding. And then, of course, you have the natural language processing, etc. But then you also have, at the top left corner, all the writing, the communication skills, the problem solving. Because one of the characteristics of the AI revolution, if you want to call it that way, is that actually requires a mix of skills. So before, companies were used to hire the person, the coder, and the person that would do the teamwork, the person that would do the management of the project. Well, what this graph is saying is that, if anything, the solution of the problem is in the mix of skills. That is, the experts of today, those that are going to be working with the technology, in addition to being required to have a number of technical skills that are really related to the subject matter, they are required to have social-emotional skills and capabilities like relational capabilities that the previous workforce was not asked for. So this is, let's say, the changing part. And this, of course, has first-order magnitude effects over what is the education system we need in order to be able to deliver on those requests. So, and this actually is very much framed in the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Let's remember that we are talking here about human-centered AI. So it's not an AI that dominates people, but that actually leverages the power of people. And so already there in 2021 that was adopted, the experts and the countries that adopted it, 193, so it's not a few one, were actually stating and agreeing on the fact that these codes for endowing people with prerequisite skills, which is, of course, as we said, basic literacy, numeracy, etc., but also the social-emotional skills. And with this, since this is a very kind of non-transparent dynamic at the moment, we were calling for research to be able to see how to best develop AI in the interest of people and how to put the education and training system at the service of this. And, of course, that liabilities needed to be taken care of. And what is the prescription about the labor market? Well, that you have to have a multi-stakeholder approach. This is not something that government in isolation or industry in isolation can solve. And also that it is very important to endow people with learning how to learn. This is a changing environment, whereby you can't be relaxed by the time you have learned a set of skills and say, like, now I went out, off we go. No, you, over life, you will have to reskill, which doesn't mean going back to school, because especially if you didn't go to school in the first place, is that there were some determinants that prevented you from doing that, either because you needed to work or because you simply didn't like it. But still, it is very important to address that and being transparent. And this is the work we have been doing, for instance, with Dr. Seth, about in the context of the G20 for the Center of Excellence, which we are now finalizing as an endeavor that is supported by India. And this is about really understanding what is needed also across countries. So let me very quickly go through this in the sense that what is also highlighted is that we cannot leave people alone. When there is a technological paradigm like the one we are living that is transformative as at a fast speed, like the one I speak normally at, the problem becomes to accompany, especially those that have low skills, because it is true that they can be made redundant, so you have to accompany them to a safe harbor job, which means a job where they can maximize their skills, where the transition cost is relatively low in terms of training, but actually they are not at risk of automation again in 2 years, because that will jeopardize their lives. So these are the policy areas. In the recommendation, as you see, this problem needs to be dealt with in a really encompassing way. And now to check whether countries are ready, we are performing this readiness assessment methodology that assesses all the areas of the AI recommendation, the ethical AI recommendation, in terms of legislation, institution, networking, stakeholders, so to tell countries, to give countries a picture of where they stand and what they need in order to move in an inclusive way towards the AI era. Now, concluding, what do we need by the time we talk about a human-centric ethical approach to AI? Well, we need, among others, and this was the focus of today, to rethink training and education. As I said, education cannot only happen before we enter the labor market. We have to transform that concept and find ways of delivering that education and training in a different way. And also, as I mentioned, I believe, and studies that exist out there, that the power is in the mix. We cannot feel comfortable endowing our IT practitioner, for instance, with the technical skills, because it won't suffice to do for a good living, to do for a good job. They need also to have the social-emotional skills. And this is actually something that we are starting to do here in India with the partnership we signed with Nielit about having also the ethical awareness. That is, by the time you code, you not only have to check that the RAM is used optimally or that you are able to perform a certain task within a certain time. You have to check whether the data are representative, whether the outcomes are biased and discriminate against someone, typically women. That's another problem. But let's say you have to know that what you're doing in terms of coding can can transform itself into concrete harm to someone. And this is something that, for instance, programmers are simply not aware of. So it's not that they don't want to take care of, it's simply that there is not awareness about this. And, of course, empowering human capital is the key. That is, like, there is not going to be any jump in productivity, there is not going to be any adoption, there is not going to be any positive outcomes unless people are part of the problem, because there can be as good as an AI as the brain that generates it. I mean, that's a fact. So if anything, we saw that there is higher demand for skills, so we have then to look and watch out for the inequalities that this triggers, because the higher the human capital, the better endowed, the better the possibility, but what happened to those that are low skills? So that is where the problem lies. And we need to have the possibility to help those people that are not really part of the key game to earn from it. And so there are ways of not only reskilling, but also facilitating what we have been calling the mobility 2.0. That means that thanks to the digital transformation and AI, We might be able to do jobs at a distance that before was impossible, but that actually help endow people with the means for living and being empowered, and also have a career progression that actually improves the well-being and the welfare. And thank you.
That was a very concise and insightful presentation, Dr. Maria Grazia. And as rightly pointed out, even the G20 under the Indian presidency, as part of the Digital Economy Working Group, we rightly emphasized on the need for technical and socio-emotional skills when it comes to digital upskilling and reskilling, especially in the context of emerging technologies. So with that, I would now like to start the panel discussion, and I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Vedmani Tiwari, who is the CEO of National Skill Development Corporation India and the CMD of NSDC International. Sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. And I think volume is low. So thank you so much, Abhishek, and thank you so much, Dr. Maria Grazia, for such an insightful presentation. We all, within 1 year, we are all getting sort of overwhelmed how AI is everywhere, and I don't think any other technology would have impacted human society in such a way. And today's topic about AI in education and skilling, and the way Dr. Maria Grazia presented that it has implications. First of all, it's not a technology discussion that we are doing. It has far-reaching impact on how we live, work, and play in our lives. And education is the place where we prepare individuals for their upcoming lives. We know that workplaces are changing. The work itself is changing tremendously. We all have been debating for quite some time that education and workplaces have to be converging to create to leverage the opportunity that is arising in front of us. So, Dr. Bashir, I would like to start with you that given that such an impact that AI is going to create, and we all have been talking about that the education will serve its purpose only is more responsive to the workplace. And today the work itself is changing rapidly and it has impact on the workplace. It is even difficult to define what the workplace is in today's hybrid workplace environment. So workplace, workforce, all getting impacted with the digital technology itself. Now AI, we can see that as a threat or we can see that as an opportunity, because the technology offers us an opportunity to get an insight into how the workplace is going to, what dimensions of the workplace will get impacted. So from UNESCO perspective, how do you think that education system should respond to this, both at the school education level where you build your foundational skills and also when you are preparing to enter into the workforce?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm from Commonwealth of Learning, a complementary institution to UNESCO. We work in skills and education. Now, I think I should commend the work carried out by Niti Aayog and India Future Skills. Both the strategies and your recommendations are really good. I think you've encompassed the entire domain. Now, if you look at education, how education and skills can interpose, as you mentioned, Dr. Tiwari, it's a conundrum. You know, the AI offers a lot of opportunities for us to leapfrog, but at the same time, we are having to be a little cautious, largely because India is a low-skilled surplus labor market, if I should put it that way. Now, the low-hanging fruits are something that some of our industry partners have really tackled very well, and the paper that India Future Skills paper deals with largely with the low-hanging fruit, which is the formal education system. You have about 250 million children studying in school at the school level, in 1.5 million schools taught by 8.5 million teachers. You have 40 million students studying at the higher education level taught by 1.5 million teachers. And you also have roughly about 10 to 20 million in non-higher education, non-school, which could be ITIs and polytechnics and so on. So there is a good strategy in place in terms of tackling them. Now, even here, as a member of the AI committee that explored the impact of AI in higher education institutions, framed by the Association of Indian Universities, where 1,100 universities are members, there are cautious views from the higher education community. And we had witnessed during the COVID times, the emergency remote teaching actually happened at the school level, not so much at the higher education level. So there is this 300, close to about 300 million people who are in the formal education system. Now what happens to the other 500 million people who are in the workforce, of which roughly about 80 to 85% are in the informal economy, particularly what we call the unorganized sector. Now it is possible for us to tackle the 15% of the organized sector, and I should commend again NSDC and all the sector skill councils that look into both organized as well as the unorganized sector. Now when it comes to our organized sector, it's possible for us to develop strategies and skilling efforts in a manner that we could work with industries and the employer organizations and others. But when it comes to the informal economy, of which 50% are agriculture workers, and agriculture is feminized largely, and in the informal economy you have more women in the informal system rather than men. In the formal system you have close to 70% men occupying, 30% women, but when it comes to informal it's 91% women and 89% men. So that's the situation we are talking about. So what is the strategy now for us as a nation to take care of the 800 million lifelong learners, if you would call it? So skilling, reskilling, upskilling were to be even for the 800 million as per their situation and settings. And there is a huge opportunity here for us. Now NSDC is a very good example for the rest of the world as to how you can tackle skilling at a large scale. And you have demonstrated well enough. But there is a long way to go, as you would agree with me, because when it comes to the informal economy, unfortunately, there are not many scalable models at this point in time. Partly because the delivery systems are not well prepared. Now we are known for the delivery systems through face-to-face, through online, through blended. Now when it comes to the informal workers, none of these would be that easy because of the limited access to gadgets, limited access absorption capacity, and also the content is not that engaging enough for them to actually reskill themselves. Now, Dr. Maria pointed out that, we need to also ensure that a large section of the society, including women in the informal sector and other sectors should be looked into. Now, this is where I think the education system and the skilling systems can play a role in terms of re-strategizing themselves in developing curriculum, in developing delivery models, in using AI itself as an agent for us to provide a solution in the long run. So I would think that there is a huge opportunity facing us, and it is inevitable that although Elon Musk and even UNESCO came up with some sort of a moratorium for AI progress, but many countries are not going to really pay much attention to. I'm not saying that it's very important. What UNESCO and others have come up with is very, very important. But the industry is not going to slow down when it comes to AI research and AI progression. And India has to catch up. I think India has, as you mentioned, in the last couple of years, has woken up to the AI reality. The European Union, China, and the United States have been at the forefront, and we are catching up. We have latecomer advantage, but India would really leapfrog. But that said, what happens to, my question is, what happens to the early education community? What happens to the informal sector workers? And more importantly, the 10 million teachers, 8.5 million at the school level and 1.5 million at the higher education level, how do we tackle them and how do we go forward? That's the question facing us.
Thank you so much. Kirti, you have worked on AI framework for skilling, where it has talked about AI for all, AI for few, or AI for many. So would you like to throw a light on this, what Dr. Bashir has just talked about, that how do you did this NCVT constituted plan, how did it work on this?
No, thanks, thanks for that, and I think a great setup by Dr. Shadrak, because what Ved is talking about was how we think about, how we're going to think about skilling for AI in a country like India. Very simple construct which we conceptualized, saying we look at it as a pyramid. And for India, the most important part is the bottom of the pyramid, where we said AI for all. Because while AI is a wonderful technology in terms of all the ways it can enhance productivity, increase efficiency, but AI is also something that has embedded ourselves into our lives. So for each individual, how AI is influencing them, they need to know. They need to build awareness. They need to use it for their own selves. And AI, yesterday I'm sure all of you heard the Prime Minister talk, where he really had the theme of AI for inclusivity and empowerment. I think that's where the AI for all base sits. If we can skill people or teach people to say, how do you use YouTube, every video on YouTube, and know that there is a translation available at the click of a button. It exists, and if you haven't tried it, go to those 3 dots on the top right, and you'll find a language translation. So now that's hugely empowering. But how do I reach those 1.4 billion people to teach them that? Image search is something. India has a lot of people who are not literate. And why India? I think the world has a lot of people who are not literate. So they can leverage AI with image search, voice to text. These are tools that can empower the whole nation and actually can empower the whole globe. So that's where the bottom of the pyramid, which is the construct for all, where you learn to use the tools for AI and also how to be careful about AI. Because we have to be careful about deepfakes, we have to be careful about cybercrime, we have to be careful about bias, so about our own data. And that's some enlightenment that needs to be available at the bottom. And when you skill the bottom or make them aware of what is available, it creates a pull for the middle, which is the many. Because the many will be the developers, they will be the people who will create the applications, they will make products that the all will use. These will be the prompt engineers, they will be the app developers, they will be all the people in higher education that we are talking about. It will be law students who will use AI not only for better preparation, but also the issues that will come up on AI, because there will be all kinds of ethics and responsibility issues that will come up. Where does the liability or where does the responsibility sit? So it will cover engineering and non-engineering domains. And then comes the few, which is right at the top, and which is where it's a focus that needs to be done jointly, whether it's the government, whether it's educational institutions, because that's where true innovation will sit. That's where IP will be created. And that's where India is going to be in the race with the globe. And even when we talk about the many, I think at the many level, Dr. Maria Grazia talked about the work we did at the G20, where we said this is going to be a global workforce. Talent is going to find its level wherever it's needed. The AI opportunity is huge. I think one of the consultancies called out a $7 trillion opportunity that AI will create. But what if there's no talent? Today, every country has a shortage of talent. India is lucky. Our talent gap is only 27%. But in terms of numbers, that's still a huge, huge number. And if you imagine what is the opportunity cost of that gap, it's huge. So as a country, we definitely need to have a strategy to skill for that, to make sure that we cover that gap. And the world is looking to India. I think at the G20, it was very, very clear when all the countries said that this demographic dividend that we have and the education structures that you talked about, this is the gap that they will fulfill. And the policy structures in India right now, when we talk of the national education policy, we talk of the national credit framework, these are institutional frameworks where skilling and education are seamlessly blending together. It's enabling this integration, and that many level that we're talking about, that's where it's going to sit. So I believe that the all is going to create a pull for the many. The few is going to keep India shining at the top of being the IT superpower that it is. But it's a global problem. We don't have to just think of our country, we have to think of the globe. And our frameworks have to take into account what's happening across the globe. I think the last point I'll end with is, on this global bit, is we have to have a language that speaks to skills and competencies across countries. Today, if a data scientist job is listed in the UK, does it correspond to what a data scientist certification is in India or in Canada? We all struggle with that, so we have to do a recertification. That is such a waste of resources and time. So if we can have a language or taxonomy which different countries can understand of each other, imagine the huge opportunity that it opens up. So as part of the Center of Excellence that we've been talking about with UNESCO, I hope that that actually comes into play and we enable this cross-country comparison of skills.
Thank you so much, Kirti. And after listening to education and skill perspective, I move over to industry now. The two ladies on the other side of the panel. Ms. Srikripa, would you like to bring a perspective on that in your workforce itself? You will have, because AI has come at such a fast pace, every participant in your own workforce and the supportive workforce that you take on your roles will be at a differential capability, and new entrants will also be coming. So kind of disparity in capabilities that you will see is going to be mind-boggling. How do you propose that this does not impact the ethical AI, which Dr. Maria Grazia talked about, is about creating that equal opportunity for everyone, both who are already in as a part of workforce and those who are entering into the workforce. So how do we ensure that what industry will do on its own and how it can interact with the skilling and education system to ensure this?
Thank you. Wonderful question. First of all, it's very humbling being here and listening to the numbers. You know, number one, from industry, I speak for Swati and me, from industry when we come, we're spoiled for opportunity available. We all come from industries where the growth is happening so fast. So when you say numbers like, 40 million, 1.5 teachers and 300 million in formal, and all of us are in formal organizations, Dr. Bashir is I'm completely humbled with this database which you gave us, and also with the keynote. On your question specifically in terms of how we're bridging the gap, a small perspective over here in terms of the fact that, it's not, I think this whole AI and Gen AI that we are in right now, everybody is rushing towards the whole thing. At my organization as in Dell, we over-index on, get back to the basics. So you would agree, in your field itself, that the number one thing that you can't forget is that you need domain experts. So if my process, we actually begin by saying, get your process right first. I need domain experts who understand for example, what's the kind of, digital requirement a domestic housewife may need, what's the kind of, digital equipment a teacher may need, and so on and so forth. That whole process and how that whole equipment is built around that whole piece. What's the price point best for that? So the first thing is understanding your process. How do you build out the whole process? That is today being done by people who we call domain experts. You get your data right, you get your process right, is when the real piece of AI and things like that come in, saying, the reporting portion. That's the third portion, saying, get my reports right. And if you go to, a general blood checkup, you're getting a report out. That's an important thing to do. Now, once you have to deep dive into that is when your prescriptive and descriptive analytics really come out of that whole piece. And once you have that, really you build a lot of volumes of good data, is when your Gen AI and AI really comes into the whole piece. The point I'm making over here is the workforce, therefore, cannot be entirely in this side of the table. I need workforce on this side. I think the Prime Minister yesterday spoke about the farmer community in terms of AI. You spoke about Dr. Bashir in terms of the farming community. If I don't have a farmer who really sort of understands what his entire land is about, I can't put AI equipment out there without getting the right data points. So what we do with our workforce is really that, first of all, get back to the basics, get your process right. When you look back, seeing that the way we've grown in our organizations, we've sometimes done a very good job of the process, sometimes it's a band-aid. So get back and set that whole process right. Because that is going to generate data. It's going to generate data every day. You go out there and buy some of our equipment in the marketplace. Some of our equipment is not in marketplace, but are used all over the world in terms of servers and stuff like that. You need that information. Like how is it performing in hot conditions? What is the temperature? That data is important. Who monitors that? That is a bunch of engineers for sure, but they are not analytics engineers. They are people who understand the product. That data is what you work on. And how, so one, I need those, and that's what we call our purple people. The mix between the people who understand data versus the ones actually doing the data. The second thing is that now there's a lot of, once you have a lot of data, the machines are beginning to sort of learn. So, okay, fine. I need the experts to some point. Now the machine is beginning to understand the data, and suddenly you have global warming. So the data has changed. So I need the experts back. I can't do without those experts. So what we are doing in the organization is actually having skill sets defined for each one of these. Even at schools, everybody is not a data engineer. Somebody is very good in artwork, somebody is very good in social sciences. So that whole piece of experts is important. But let them know that once you have stable data, you are going to have the machine sort of being able to predict. And that's when we keep saying this process will teach the teacher kind of a thing. So you have in-house learning programs, and from a perspective saying, I know this, can I sort of expand my skills a bit? We're like doctors now. We've got to constantly keep on sort of seeing what is the latest medicine in town, and how do we enable people to understand that. Now, will this expert go to that side of Gen AI? Unlikely. But will this one sort of stretch his hands and muscles, saying that his or her hands and muscles saying, I need to expand my skills a bit more. Now this has become predictable, let me leave it to the machine. Similarly, from the Gen AI expert, can you build something out which is not implementable and say this is a one for all kind of a thing? I think yesterday when we spoke about AI for all, we were talking about the fact that at every point in time, you spoke about examples of language and stuff like that. At every point in time, it's touching our lives. But it is not 100% sort of replacing what you're doing. So what is the training need for each at that level is our train the trainer. And last year or year before last, we had this huge ML ops requirement. So we had a bunch of people who were 10 of them trained into ML ops, then expanded, then from their experience teach the teacher kind of a thing, and then got more. We've got 300 people right now who are ML ops. The same journey will have to happen with Gen AI. So this one comes from this side of it, this one comes, that's what we do as a model, saying this is what we want to do. Don't miss that you want to completely keep a perspective of what the customer, and sometimes it's student is a customer, sometimes our buyer is the customer. What is the requirement? And don't be sitting and saying every day I want to do something which can't be used. That's our model.
So I'll also add here, I'm Swati, I come from a company, EXL. So here we, to bridge the gap, so today we talk a lot about democratization of AI, creation of citizen data scientists, and we are a data analytics company as well as operations company. So what we are also doing is teaching our operations folks a lot of data analytics tools, be it in visualization or any other analytical methodologies which are not too advanced, but teaching them so that they can embed day to day in their operations. Also, a significant proportion of the organization is being trained on Gen AI, right from the bottom to the middle level to the senior leadership. So a lot of things are being done because now this is the part of the mainstream.
Thank you so much. I now move over to Dr. Maria. Having heard all the panelists here, would you like to give us some perspective on the best practices that UNESCO might have come across to prepare our educational institutions for this upheaval that we are seeing at the workplaces?
Well, to start with, allow me just to clarify one thing that you said before, and is that everybody was asking for a moratorium. If anything, UNESCO was not. Because we do believe that this has never worked in the past and will not work today for anything, on Earth. And in addition, if anything, we find it somehow curious or controversial that those that are in the business and have the leading advantage are asking to stop basically the others, because that will never stop them, to do something that is like, let's discuss the principles and the values that already exist. And that is called the UNESCO Recommendation on the Ethics of AI, signed by 193 member states. So, if anything, we never asked for it. Another thing that allow me to highlight, and that complements to what you've been saying, and is that, and in some cases also challenges, that is, we see very often, and of course education is an important part of UNESCO work, it's in our name as well, but for us education is an encompassing concept. We can't always postpone problems saying basic education has to deal with it. Because if anything, basic education is solving the problem from here to 20 years. That is when kids will be out of school. And that it will be too late and the problem will be different. So again, the solution it might seem a bit repetitive, but it's in the mix, but this time of the education and training. That's why vocational training takes a completely different level of importance in these days and age. Certification gets a completely different level of importance in the era, and micro-certification in particular. Why? Because indeed, and this is not in antithesis, and it's like we have to go back to basics. If you don't have the basic cognitive skills, you're not going to be able to do anything related to upgrade, thinking, and dealing with change. You won't be resilient. So for sure, we are working very actively, and there are good practices that emerge about good access to good education. It's not only access to education per se, but access to quality education. So that's the first thing. But that needs to be complemented and also put in a set of actions by countries and private sector, for that matters, that is about vocational education and training. That is, I don't know how many times you have heard like, oh, and now our schools have to do, I don't know, greening curriculum, and now they have to do globalization curricula. I mean, at the end of the day, the kids are in school so many hours a day, and they can't be more. And let's remember that we have to train the trainers. That is, let's ask the question of how ready the educational staff is ready to deliver on the new subject that need to be taught. So on the one hand, we have to reinforce good education of the basic cognitive and social-emotional skills. And this can be done, for instance, and this is a good practice that UNESCO is putting in place, through something that people will not think has any relationship with AI, which is sport. So what do we need? We saw in the picture, for instance, that you have the need to have ability to work in teams, to have the relationship with good leaders, and also the ability to cope with failure. Because in programming, very often, the first code you write, it's just not working. It's not what you need. So how can you teach that at school? To some extent, you need to apply different methodologies. So that's another good practice that is emerging. It is the importance of the methodological approach, the pedagogical approach when teaching certain subjects, but then finding ways of endowing people with skills that is not necessarily through schools. For instance, sports. So you convey, of course, when people do sport and good sport, what you get is better physical and mental health. But at the same time, by the time, for instance, they play in teams, they learn to recognize the leadership. They learn to communicate among each other. They learn endurance, because you fail, you lose. And so then you have to continue playing, you have to continue training because of that. So there is a different way of endowing people with the skills needed for the AI era. And then last but not least, the micro-certification I was mentioning. And this is about the fact that, as Kirti was saying, very likely, well, all countries miss the skills needed for the AI era. This is clear. Evidently, they don't miss all the same skills. So in some parts of the world, these skills exist to different extents, but they do. So tapping into this repository, nevertheless, requires a minimum understanding, so transparency of the market, whereby I can recognize what are the skills that are available, say, in India, or I'm Italian in Italy, right? But if certification, if there isn't a clear equivalent, how am I going to know that Kirti has the skills I need, or how she's supposed to know, how she's supposed to know that I have the skills she needs? And this goes also to very specific skills, which means the micro-certification of certain skills. So that's where, and at least having what we used to call in the jargon of the G20 a quasi-equivalence, to me is not really key to understand whether that person has a certification, but at least to understand what is the equivalent of certain certification in different countries, which helps me as a company, for instance, address the needs I have in the short term. And then if a certain type of skills is actually available in a certain country, I can go and look into the training and the education system of that country and understand how did they manage to endow those people with those skills and learn and replicate it at home. And so that's a mutual learning that happens, which satisfies the needs of more countries and agents around the world at the same time. So these are the kind of things that emerge very clearly as needs and best practices to be put in place.
So, Kirti, you have heard about micro-certification so emphatically put forward here. And we understand that NCVT is doing a lot of work on micro-certification. How do you think that in India, we can progress fast on this and we can take a lead on this matter?
So it's very interesting that Mr. Tiwari is the CEO of NSDC, and actually NSDC drives the Skill India mission. So pretty much everything that happens around skilling and vocational education in India is spearheaded by him. And NCVT is the skills regulator for those who who are not aware. So they accredit the courses. So traditionally in vocational education in India, we've gone for very long skill development programs, on an average 400-500 hours. It's been a critique, but it's also been said that it's necessary. And micro-credentials, what Dr. Maria Grazia is talking about, is a new concept that is being brought into the skilling ecosystem in India. Conceptually, it's a fantastic idea. And as part of NASSCOM, because I represent industry and all the Sector Skills Council, where we look at how do we build skills that industry needs, clearly this is the need of the hour. If you think about ChatGPT or prompt engineering, let's just talk about prompt engineering, one of the hot new jobs that are in the world today because of generative AI. You can learn prompt engineering in 2 hours, including practice. So why do I need to do a course for 100 hours or 200 hours or 300 hours? And I will learn as I go along. So I will learn for 2 hours, I'll learn something. Then as I need it, I will learn for 2 hours more or 30 minutes more. Like I just told you about YouTube, your upskilling happened in 2 minutes, where now you know that a YouTube video can be translated. So this micro-credential framework is going to be transformational, I believe, in India. If we can look at stackable micro-credentials, if we can add one micro-credential along with the other, when we can say that we have these 3 competencies and you can add one micro-credentials on top of it, you don't need to upskill for the entire job role, you can upskill for a new job role. The other good thing that happens with micro-credentials is it makes visible in microbytes to the world what skills are needed or what skills are available. Today, every company, and I'm sure Swati and Kripa will bear out on that, they are looking for skills. They're looking for very specific competencies that an individual has. You're not looking for a certified data scientist because you have your engineers. Now you want to know what's the top up for that engineer to be able to do that analytics job or to build that application. So the micro-credential construct to me is something that industry wants, that employers can appreciate and get behind. I think that's a little plug that I have for industry to say, please support this micro-credentials and the certifications that are built because of the competency-based certifications and the micro-credentials. Because if that happens, then that adoption that we're talking about, how do we get to that all and that many, that pull will take place because learners will know that if I acquire this skill, if I can demonstrate the skill with the micro-credential, which is accredited by the regulators, which is credit equivalent when I am in a college, so I don't have to study something again and again, it can contribute towards my degree. It's a fantastic construct. I mean, the amount of energy it can release, directing effort in the right way, in the right direction of the skills that are needed, is a great way to bridge the demand-supply gap for skills.
So, Dr. Bashir Ahmed, you talked about the dimension of the education ecosystem in India, and the conversation that we have heard here is a very wide-ranging conversation. How do we prepare the such a large cohort of students in the schools and colleges and the educators themselves, and whether the education system itself will undergo a lot of changes, the way we are talking about micro-credentials, etc. Do you need a 2 decade of education in the college is the right way to go forward, or there will be a continuous movement between a workplace through a multiple entry-exit formulation? So what's your perspective on this?
I think the national education policy is a game changer, where they bring in the flexibility, entry and exit options, and also introduction of vocational courses right from grade 6 onwards as an opportunity for people to develop skills. But still the national education policy confines itself to some sort of a structured system, if you like. Now what is likely to happen in the future is, in my opinion, 3 things. One is every country would want to have a public digital learning infrastructure. In India, you see this in the shape of Swayam, NPTEL, and India Skills Portal and others, Future Skills Prime and others. So all these were to converge so that a marketplace could be offered. And this should be accessible to the learning community, students in particular, in terms of them having to access these, also develop acquire micro-credentials as they go, so they can stack alongside their school certification. They would also have this stacked certification. So that's one strategy. The second strategy is, as I mentioned, 10 million teachers would need to be looked into. And, they need support in terms of developing new pedagogical approaches, embedding concepts like greening and digitalization and AI impact into their curriculum, bringing in 21st century skills, from the future society, which are the learners at their hand. And also, as mentioned by Dr. Maria, looking at not just the typical science subjects, now STEM is a major one, but also through physical education and other activities, how do you inculcate 21st century skills, value-based education, and so on. There are quite a lot of opportunities working with the teachers per se. The third strategy should be, in my opinion, in terms of using AI to predict the skills gap and the future skills, and the modeling that should enable us to predict what is likely to come in the next 7 years, 10 years, and so on, so that we can prepare ourselves as a nation and as actors, whether it's NCVT or Ministry of Education or any regulator or the implementer, the macro, meso, what they call, and the micro delivery systems. All these 3 could prepare themselves so that we are ready for the future.
Wanted to add a small point, to your, when you talked about teachers and various platforms available, and also what Dr. Maria Grazia said about we can't wait for the basic education system to take up. But all these resources that are available, they're being used in very interesting ways, whether it's in the state governments or whether it's in colleges, to jumpstart their curriculum or to jumpstart skilling at large scale. So the resources are there. I think people are finding creative ways to use them. And that's the short-term impact I think we can see.
We are running out of time, so I'll just request the 2 ladies to have 2 minutes of closing comments from your side.
Okay. No, so I will just want to speak on 2-3 items. One is, I would just say that India, there's a lot of while in the market, because I represent the AI industry, services industry, so while there is some bit of lower demand in the Western markets, but in India there's so much of demand, and across the spectrum, be it in data engineering, for master data management, data quality, data governance, data architecture, be it for the visualization, reporting, business intelligence, or be it for advanced analytics, machine learning, NLP, computer vision. So there's a lot of requirement on every side, and now augmented by Gen AI with new roles coming up like prompt engineers or AI ethicists, AI trainers, ML engineers, etc. So what we are seeing is across every spectrum there's demand. So I would motivate the youth of India to pick it up. Second thing, there must be many from the education industry also. A lot can be done if there's a more closer industry academia collaboration. So we do try to ensure that we have not only hire from the campuses, which is a big number that my company hires, but also organize contests on AI and analytics use cases. So that also helps in, and I would motivate the students out here to participate in there. And thirdly, I would just say that because we are running short of time, so I will just say that skilling, reskilling, upskilling, I think spend some time on each of these areas. Skill yourself in a new area, reskill in the area adjacent to you, and upskill. And I think AI provides a lot of opportunity for that. And there's both a pull and a push factor. You may be out of your existing jobs in times to come if they get automated, and there's a pull factor that there's so much of things out there, and you can really have interest once you deep dive into it. So I would just close by saying that spend some time in learning each day.
Thank you, Swati. Dr. Tiwari, so Mr. Tiwari and all the three of you, I have nothing really much to add except the fact that I think from whatever I've heard today, there are just so many resources available. You spoke about the accreditation courses, you spoke about the woman portion has actually sort of hit my heart quite a bit. We need to see a lot more women out there, and they are skilled. We do career refresh programs, and we just need to see a lot more women on the forefront on this one. I think from organizations like mine, when we spoke about get back to the basics, we are also talking about saying continuous learning. There is a lot of opportunity out there. You said prompt engineering 2 hours. Yeah, I mean, like, just do it. And we all have navigated through our careers by just continuously learning. That's my biggest sort of takeaway out here, saying that I personally think that India's pretty much got a very, very good footprint on AI, Gen AI, and the whole works around it. And we need to sort of capture the resources a lot more so that the younger generation and those who are already in field are able to take advantage. Thank you for this insight.
Thank you so much, and I would like to open the house for just 2 questions from the audience before we close the session. You may identify yourself and the panelist who you would like to ask the question.
Hey, I'm Satish. So I have one question. Let's say we are approaching a school or college for Gen AI adoption. How can we kind of show the value and show that this is going to improve their process, right? Basically, it's going to give a more efficient learning experience for their students. And it's not just that, right? We have, we have created a product called Hevol, and it can basically create the assessment automatically, and it interacts with LLM to kind of personalize the entire experience, learning experience, right? But the traditional education system, as we know it, it kind of, it's like 10 steps behind, because you'll have to educate them, and then you'll have to let them know that you'll have to incorporate this into their everyday process, right? How do we even showcase that? Because they're not really ready to take that giant step towards future learning ways, right? How do you do that?
So you have to, see, I will say that you have to start with that first solid use case and client, right? So you create a prototype of whatever you want to sell, right? Create it and make it as robust as possible, and then try to fetch the first client. That is your journey. Any journey will start like that only. So first customer when you have, you might need to invest there, give it for free, as a free POC, whatever, because I don't understand what your current stage is, but you have to do that. Once you have that first client and you can demonstrate it as a success story, then I think your journey begins.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, at Dell we just do that. I mean, this whole GenAI has taken us all by a storm. We've actually got back to the drawing board at the highest level and had pillars saying that what are the use cases you really want to take this into, and that's what you need to tell the schools also. For that you need to have clarity and get back to the basics, saying what are you really going to help them out with.
Thank you so much, and it's time to, you want to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one note that is like, I think the question was somewhat biased in the sense that how to demonstrate is worth it.
No,
You have to demonstrate.
So how
I
to
mean,
demonstrate?
you have
No, sorry. The intention is like, how do we showcase the value? That is one thing, but are they ready to take it? That's the question, right? Like, so let's say I'm not coming from a well-defined. I do not have credentials enough credentials, right? How do we showcase or make them understand this is going to add value, right? So they should be first open to listen to us. That's first thing. And the second thing is, like, it's going to change the process, whatever they have been following for a very long time.
It's about the use cases and also what you want to do with it.
So we
But
want to integrate with the existing learning system. So we want it to be the GenAI or the app, whatever you're going to provide, be used in an everyday, like, let's say, I want to, so my teacher, he taught me that we'll have to.
So I think, as everybody has said, it's a use case.
You
Have to understand what is the true customer need and demonstrate to them that with AI you can solve your problem much better than anyone. It's up to you that what use case you present to this.
And I think Dr. Maria said what we all very, very commonly use in our workplace: fail fast, iterate fast, succeed fast. You've got to continuously do that. You keep doing that.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Now,
Thank you, firstly, Mr. Tiwari, for moderating this insightful discussion, and thank you to all the panelists for sharing their perspectives on issues of gender representation in STEM, how education can prepare itself for the future of work, and how training programs can be made more effective. There is a lot to take away from this panel discussion, but we also have a lot more to see. Before I end this panel, I'd like to invite Kaushal to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you, Abhishek. I'll try to close in 1 minute itself over there. So, first of all, on behalf of JACE, thank you, Ministry of Electronics and IT, to collaborate for this insightful discussion. I have just small one takeaway from every speaker, which is a very insightful perspective that we all need to delve into it. First of all, Dr. Ved Binay sir, in terms of how to integrate into the skilling ecosystem, that's the important part. Kirti, thank you for touching the part on the skill taxonomy. I think this is something which the government is also working very proactive from the Labour Ministry perspective, because that's a common need to globalization specifically. Dr. Bashir Ahmed touched upon a very important aspect of delivery models on AI, and working in this space, we have seen how teachers use their own definitive models. If they are given the right resources, they can deliver it to all different aspects of the pyramid over there. Dr. Maria, the human-centric AI approach is something that we need to look at each and every component when it comes to it. Sri Krishna, the purple people, I think that's going to be the coin term that we need to use specifically when we look at the top of the pyramid specifically over there. And Swati, yes, industry, academia collaboration is something that needs to grow much more proactively over there, and this is something which needs to be driven by the markets also on this. Lastly, thank you to my team, Dhaval, Antara, Siddharth, who have been extensively working on this discussion, and thank you once again for all the speakers to join us for today. Thank you.
All right. Hey, good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to be here today. It's an honor to be at GPAI and talk about skilling, and It's also hard to follow from the previous session, which had so much data, but I want to see how we can build on it based on what we're doing on skilling, primarily given that AI is here and everywhere. And one of the things that comes to my mind is technology as an aspect of skilling is not new to us. And some of us who've been here for a few generations in the workforce and have had parents who worked in the government or central or state government had gone through this in the 80s or maybe in the 90s when computer was coming first into the offices. And there was that skilling needed. And then there was internet. And then there's AI. And the big difference between all of these three is you have a lot of technology to help that skilling happen, which wasn't there in the first few, right? So talking about AI, one of the key things is it is transforming everything that we're doing today and across various segments and various sectors and various walks of life. You know, there are many, and you know, from basic stuff like agriculture, and there are aspects in agriculture for precision farming, for being able to do better farming, soil test, pest control. And in fact, one of the aspects where we have seen students who have skilled themselves with AI and AI IoT is able to actually come up with products that are helping farmers in Orissa to be able to actually salvage a lot of their farming problems and come to some level of neutrality by applying AI tools, an IoT tool. And this was done by students who were going through the skilling program. And when you get to manufacturing, there are aspects of how do you manage the supply chain? How do you do preventive analytics on the machines that are out there? How do you service them? And how can you actually make sure that you have the right yield and you have the right kind of progress in your manufacturing line? AI is applied there in terms of computer vision and other areas. Consumer and packaged goods is a very interesting space. You have n number of goods that are there as we walk into the retail store. Sometimes we don't walk, we buy it online. But even there is aspects of how much do you need to stock, understock, overstock, what kind of mechanisms you can use with AI to be able to have an efficient store that actually caters to the demands of what the consumer is buying and being able to control. Education, needless to say, there is several aspects in education where AI is getting used and skilling is needed. One is in terms of how you run the school, how you do the teaching. There is also a big aspect of how you learn. And the Human Development Index is one of the projects done by a student who has been upskilling with AI in the school, where there is curated learning. You give a topic that you want to learn, it automatically pulls up the areas and websites that has got that content. It does two things. One, it personalizes your learning appetite. Second, it removes the distraction. How many times have we tried to search for something, and by the time we know, we've passed 30 minutes or an hour and we wandered off to various websites and forgotten what we actually wanted to learn. Applications like that, which actually makes a personalized tutor for yourself, is again a big part of AI in education. Healthcare, there is a lot of, in terms of diagnostics, assistive diagnostics, so that you're able to apply faster decisions for physicians and doctors rather than having to go through hordes of time and data before they can make the right diagnostic decision, like a radiology department. Drug discovery, there are aspects of AI that's being involved in healthcare. Space exploration, while it's new and there is a lot of opportunity, you know, predictive analytics is a big part. Space communication is another big part where AI is used. And the other aspect is just, autonomously fixing things there without having to actually send a person all the time into the space to actually service something that is out deployed. Construction is also another industry and segment that's heavily adopted, from architecture to materials, time taken to build, safety measures for both the workers as well as the companies that are using it, energy consumption in the buildings that are built. There is a lot of the AI aspects that are used there. Entertainment, needless to say, I know there's probably not anyone in this room who has either not used an Amazon or Netflix for you to know what kind of, or Spotify or other entertainment where it automatically curates to your choices and recommendations. A lot of that has AI at the back end. Now, what does it mean? AI is already transforming our lives. It is transforming our work, the society as we know it, and we've been using it. Sometimes we've been using it without our knowledge. Sometimes we use it because we know it is out there. And this brings a whole gamut of opportunities in terms of how we get prepared for this big, technology wave that is making a big difference in our lives. Now, this particular chart that I'm going to show is a very interesting graph that talks about AI and the jobs landscape. On the left, you see the skills and competency, very loosely defined as high and low, bottom to top. And then on the right, on the x-axis, you see the jobs. How many jobs are there? And I'll start to kind of build it fully. If you look at the top of this chart, is a responsible AI consumer. This is an average consumer that's using some level of automation or mechanism without knowing that there is an underlying AI, but they're relying a lot of that capability to make their experience really better. The power user, which is the next, is actually people who are really using these solutions. They're intentionally wanting to use AI to actually find out how they can provide better solution. They're not really the people who are actually writing the code, but they are power users. They are really intentionally deploying and using AI to give a better experience in the job they do or in the products they build. Solution builders is the next one, where they use a number of the open platforms and put the puzzle together of the various aspects of AI and to be able to give an end-to-end vertical solution for whatever segment or market that I just talked about, right? Be it agriculture, be it manufacturing, entertainment, whichever, healthcare. So solution providers are getting more closer to the AI technology, but they're still, in general, the low-code, no-code kind of, but people who are actually putting the jigsaw puzzle together to give the right experience pulling the AI technology. Then you have the AI engineers and developers who are actually dealing with the data, who are actually dealing with algorithms, the hardware and the software, who are writing these models and playing with these models, making it more effective and efficient. And then you have the AI researchers who are looking at areas with the academia, with the research funding, what next is there, what are the other possibilities, what other optimizations you can do, both on the hardware side, at the silicon level, on the software side, with all of the layers of software, and at the system side when you deploy them, be it in data centers, be it at the edge, be it at the PC. Right? So these basically shows the kind of skill and the job prospects that are there in this changing landscape. And I wanted to give a flavor of this so that we understand that this is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. And this is not the same kind of skilling that you will apply across the entire gamut. With that, I want to kind of transition into, okay, so we saw the various segments where this is getting impacted, and we kind of tip of the iceberg, and then we saw the kind of skill set and the jobs that are needed, and then what does it really mean when it comes to digital readiness? We've all talked a lot about the digital gap or the opportunities that digital brings to the industry and to the society. In this case, digital readiness largely talks about the skills that are need to be created, or learned, the mindset you need to have, the tool sets that you need to apply, and eventually what are the opportunities that you have. Now, there are various aspects of the digital readiness that we as Intel are also playing with the government and various research and academia and MIT and Niti Aayog and all of the other fantastic programs that the government has. And we try to look at it at the entire gamut, starting from AI for citizens, where there is general awareness. Of course, awareness is very critical, and if you don't have the awareness, you will not know what this means. And there'll be a lot of the misconceptions, as well as fears and worries, as well as where to apply and how to apply and what to use, what to believe, what not to believe. That's part of the AI for citizens. AI for youth is a very important aspect, because this is where, in the previous panel discussion, we talked about 20 years of education, where you're learning. And this is all the way from your school to the college and higher education, how we can make sure the youth are ready with the right kind of skills that are needed for AI. And for this, we've run a variety of programs, AI for Youth, the AIoT curriculum that we've built into the education system. And then we also, Intel also has a global impact program where we take students who actually upskill themselves with AI, either through a course or a few years, and they've come up with fantastic social impactful projects. And then we start to showcase that as a way to inspire people to get skilled. AI for future workforce is another big part wherein you're almost graduating or you're in the higher education, you're going to get into the industry, and you're closer, maybe a year or two from now, or you're just going to graduate. How can you make sure that you're ready for it? And there are some very good programs that we have run with NILT, and then where we're getting the engineering students to actually do AI hands-on projects and capstone projects and understanding the various aspects of machine learning and artificial intelligence, including LLM and Gen AI. Next thing is about current workforce, and this is the one that I worry a lot, and I'll tell you why. It is very easy to skill somebody in the future because there is nothing to unlearn. People who are in the workforce are spending 8 to 10 hours in a day doing what they already knew. They don't have the time to upskill or get ready for this. And this is where the previous discussion about micro-credentials, how can I learn the new aspects of AI that are so important? Because the workforce that's coming in with the education system and the curriculum and the future workforce that is learning AI, they're getting prepared. The people who are already in the job are spending a lot of time on the skill that they already knew versus a skill that they need to develop. And that becomes a big challenge. And it's an important aspect because this is a workforce that's already in place. And we have some things that is going on for the current workforce in terms of on-job upskilling and reskilling. And then you have the digital readiness for leaders, where there's policies, decisions that are taken at the corporate level so that you know how you can run these programs at a scale and what changes are coming in the future. And of course, we do tie all of this together to make sure that we have opportunities and a platform for people to also showcase their skills, what they've learned. And that opens up the minds for people who want to get inspired, as well as opportunities for people who have learned and done the skilling process, be it at the education level, at the youth level, or at the workforce level. So at the end of the day, the key aspect to this is digital readiness is about how you can have the skills, ability to build the skills, how you can have the mindset, which is important to know when you have the skill, you want to know what are the key aspects that are needed to apply the skill. There is ethics, there is responsible AI, there is security aspects, where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense, how to debunk some of the myths, and how to make sure that you're making the right decisions where you're applying. And then the tool sets, which is basically, I've learned some aspects, what are the things that are available to me on the hardware and software side to actually deploy it and actually build things. And then the last thing is about opportunities, meaning you learn all of this, and if you don't show the opportunities, the value chain is not complete. So with that, I want to actually show an example of Tina Sahu, who's here in the room with us. Thank you, Tina, for being here. I want you to stand up after we play the video. Tina is one of the students, 2-3 years ago, just before COVID, 2019, went through an AI program. She's actually now ready to graduate from college, and she's also an aspiring data analyst. Let me play this video for you to see what she's done with the skilling program.
And I'm 17 years old. I don't really have access to technology at home, but if truth be told, I never really considered myself a technical person anymore. In school, we were introduced to the AI for Youth program, and it gave me the idea to design an AI model that can predict mental depression. But afterwards, I was amazed to discover that the model resulted in a 77 to 80% accuracy rate. When I look around and see young people struggling with mental health issues, it gives me a hope that models like these can be leveraged to give them the help they need. And though I feel there are still questions on ethics and AI. This project has made me realize that AI and tech can be used for good.
Why don't you stand up and want to give a round of applause? The reason why we showed this video is because she's a great example of going through that value chain. At high school, she studied AI through the curriculum and did the projects. She had the mindset to apply to the right problem statement, use the right kind of tool sets, and she's used all of that to create the opportunity for herself in what she's passionate about and how she can go do more wonderful things. Oops. Okay, all right. So that was one example. Just this past week, I was at Dr. Rajendra Kumar's KV school, and I happened to see this project called Vyan Vyas. This is an amazing project done by the students in the school who are actually using hand gestures with the AI models that can help neuromotor skills. And not only does it help for people who have neuro disorders, but it also gives you an opportunity to kind of apply it for more artistic ways without using your actual keyboard and mouse. And this is a very fantastic project that I saw where the kids actually learned and applied it directly, and then were able to show the value as well. So things like this are really fascinating, because you also end up trying to figure out how the skilling can be further fine-tuned. Because if we don't see this progression, then the way we are actually skilling also has a deficiency. So this allows us to actually fine-tune a lot of the things that we do. The last thing that I want to show you is about tool set. And I know there's a lot of talk about, 100 billion parameters, LLMs, 20 billion, 30 billion. We talk about these various Gen AI parameters. When we talk about this whole value chain, I mentioned about tool set, what are the things that are available as you do the skilling? Because AI is not just only about writing software or writing no software. It's also about knowing what kind of tools you can use. And clearly AI in many ways has also democratized the way we solve the problem. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You have the large models, and you have the small, and you have many in between. And our ability to give and unlock that continuum, give the students as well as the people who are skilling the opportunity to play with all of this. And this is what we're trying to do with Nilet, where we're setting up PCs as well as maybe potentially even clusters, so that they can apply this to the various data sets and real world problems. So this is my last slide, and after that certainly I want to give time for the panel discussion. This is a study that was done in terms of preparing people, institutions, and ecosystem, and talks about the various aspects that need to come together that summarizes a report from JFF, the Jobs for the Future Workforce, and an analysis that really talks about what are the various aspects with AI coming in, what are the various aspects that you need to address across the society, across institutions, and in a larger scale with the ecosystem, with the policies and other aspects. And I'll summarize this into three big things. One is the skills that we provide for AI has to be equitable, accessible, and inclusive for all. That's very important, because this is not a shift or a transformation that's happening only to a pocket of society or people. It's transformational in the sense that it's at scale, touching all of us. How can we bring the right kind of tool sets that's available to apply this learning? And then the last one is embracing this mindset of a lifelong learning. Like I said, skilling is important at the education, future workforce. It's also just as important for the current workforce who are already working, and how you can get that continuous learning mindset and be able to really achieve the maximum out of the human-machine interaction that's really going to bring this change about. With that, I will leave with this quote, which is from one of the co-founders of Intel, Robert Noyce. And I won't read it out, but this is something that always inspires us to make sure that we are in this journey of learning continuously and skilling, and we're in the middle of this transformation. AI is not a transformation that's going to happen. It's already happening, and we're already part of it. And how can we be prepared to make sure that we can maximize on that opportunity? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gokul, for the insightful address. I'm sure that sets the context for the panel discussion. But before I hand over the floor to our moderator, I would like to introduce the panel. We have in the moderator's role Mr. Anshul Sunak, who is the Principal Engineer and Global Director, Intel Digital Readiness Programs and Strategy, Intel USA. Anshul holds the position of Principal Engineer and Global Director of Digital Readiness Programs Strategy at Intel, headquartered in Santa Clara. He is responsible for the global strategy and execution of Intel's Digital Readiness Program, which encompasses tech skilling, workforce preparation, AI democratization, and other emerging tech skills. He also contributes to Intel's digital inclusion and ESG efforts, aligning with the RISE 2030 goals, and has developed large-scale digital skilling programs. Recognized as a global business and thought leader in technology and education, Anshul was named one of the top 10 most inspiring education leaders of 2023 by the Education Insights magazine. We're honored to have you here in our panel. I'd like to move on to Mr. William Tan. He is the section head, AI, School of Electronics and Information Communication and Technology, Institute of Technology Education, Singapore. William has over 15 years of experience in technical professional education. He collaborates closely with industries like Intel to bring the latest technology know-how to equip ITE trainees. With Intel and like-minded companies' help, he together works with his team brought in, developed and delivered Singapore's first higher national ITE certificate in AI applications. Currently, his team is working on work-study diploma in this area. We are honored to have you here, William. We are also, it's an honor to have Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, who is the Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog. Dr. Vaishnav is a socio-technologist and engineer trained to design and build large-scale systems that possess both human as well as technological complexities. Presently, he serves as the Mission Director for the Atal Innovation Mission, a flagship initiative of the Government of India under the auspices of Niti Aayog. Since its inception in 2016, the Atal Innovation Mission has built infrastructure for innovation via several programs. With a vision to create 1 million young innovators, the Atal Tinkering Laboratories program under the AIM has so far built 8,700 maker spaces in schools across the length and breadth of India. We are honored to have you here, Dr. Vaishnav. I'll move to Mr. Suresh Yadav, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff, Office of the Secretary General, the Commonwealth Secretariat, United Kingdom. Mr. Suresh Yadav is the Secretary of the Commonwealth AI Consortium and is working to promote the development of AI and capacity building in the Commonwealth countries. Prior to this, he has worked in the board of World Bank Group as representative of India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. As a member of the IRS, the Indian Revenue Service in India, he has worked as an officer on special duty to the President of India and Director to the Finance Minister of India. We are honored to have you here, sir. We also have Dr. Kirtika Ramanathan, who will be joining us remotely from Singapore. Can we have her on screen? Right. Hi, Dr. Ramanathan. Kirtika is a senior lecturer at Singapore Management University. She worked in the areas of brain-inspired cognitive systems with the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, with a focus on algorithmic modeling of a neural level learning. As the Deputy Director of Education Programs and Technology at Science Center, Singapore, she explored emerging technologies with a focus on technology and enablement for education. Since 2018, she has developed several programs on sustainable development and mentored students to work on projects that leverage STEM to address issues on sustainability. We're glad to have you here on the panel, Kirtika. And with this, I'd like to hand over the floor to our moderator, Anshul. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhishek. You're doing very good job in keeping us disciplined. I appreciate it. And thank you, GPI, for giving us this opportunity. I can see a lot of global audiences. So I just want to get a quick data point. How many of you are students? Just raise hand. Okay. How many of you are teachers? Raise hand. Okay, none of. Okay. How many of you are government practitioners? A few of you. Okay. How many of you are from industry? Okay, a lot of you. Okay. How many of you from media? A few of you. Okay. How many of you are from civil society? Okay. Thank you. Data is very important. Data is the new oil for AI, right? So that's why it's very important for me to get a pulse, quick pulse. Thank you, Gokul, for really shaping this conversation by bringing in Tina and really showing the hope for country as well as the world. The question which really I want to put it in front of this whole panel is, if we can have one Tina, what will it take to really have billions of Tina across the world? Now that is the real value of AI, shaping the future of work and future of learning for building a new human capital. So it will take a lot of partnership, lot of collaboration, lot of new thinking to really create billions of Tina in all aspects of society, so that technology becomes truly inclusive, irrespective of the location, gender, ethnicity, economic background, and the benefits are available to everybody. That's what we truly mean by digital readiness for all. So with that spirit, I want to really thank all the panelists who are really representing different aspects of the society and really have a conversation on this. What would it really take to build billions of Tina around the world? So let me start with you, Mr. Suresh, because you really bring an umbrella of Commonwealth, which kind of touches more than 56 countries around the world. And as a multilateral policy shaping bodies, what do you think policymakers are doing, are not doing, what they can do more to really shape this new human capital for the world?
First of all, thank you, Ansul, very much. And thank you, Gokul, for setting the context about this conversation, starting from the first session to this session. And before I answer that question, let me tell you what is at stake at the global stage. As many of you know that the global economy is $100 trillion as of now. And the prediction is that this global economy is likely to be 130 trillion by 2030. So out of this additional 30 trillion, almost 15 trillion is going to be contributed by AI. So you can imagine the size of AI economy, just to put in a very figurative way, and which you can see that 4 times the size of the economy of India, which is 4 trillion now. So what we're talking about is $15 trillion economy. And that's where the people like Tina and the people like you who are here are going to be impacted the most, because you are going to be the part of that unfolding AI story at the global level. And probably after listening to what the Prime Minister said yesterday at G20 Delhi Declaration, that how AI is going to be there and how we should be working together. And that's where the policymakers, whether it's international organization, whether it's private sector, whether it's a government, they have to come together to deliver to those aspirations. Now, what are the challenges? 2 challenges which I identified. One is relating to the computing power. If you don't have computing power, you will be bypassed by the AI economy. And the second most important parameter which we're talking about here in the first panel, in the second panel, is about digital readiness, skilling program, talent programs. If a country is not having this second element along with the first element, then you are going to be bypassed by the AI economy. Now, how do we do it? That's the fundamental question, because some of the countries, big economies, G7 economies, they have money, they have the resources. Many of them have supercomputers, which even if you have money, you can't buy it today because there is a waiting time of almost 18 to 2 years. So the question is, there is no supply, even if you have a demand in terms of money. So how do we bring that computing power? How do we bring those skilling to the countries, to the society, and to the people? And that's where the international organizations kicks in. As a representative of India, the World Bank and IFC and the others, one of the fundamental things we use to ask those institutions is to respond to the situations where the market forces are failing, where the market forces do not have capacity to invest. So it means that the computing power, which Prime Minister announced yesterday, India is going to have AI mission. And if you know the India story, most of the things which India has achieved through the mission mode. So what world needs now, what international organization or what the governments needs now is AI mission programs. You need to have these mission programs where you bring the capacity of computing, where you bring the capacity of skilling, education, and the others together to the member country, because the market is not going to take care. Many of the private sector who work with us as a part of the consortium, artificial intelligence consortiums, where we have all the countries, many of the private sectors are doing those social work, they are contributing to the skilling process, but many of them are profit driven. So if the market is failing, I will say that the governments and international organizations have to take over to ensure that the 8 billion population, out of which 2.7 billion are still unconnected to digital networks, are able to get the dividends from the AI. I'll stop here. Thank you, Ansel, for this question.
Yeah, since you identified two challenges, I want to ask you a follow-up question, if you allow. How do you see the leaders' preparation? I know because you're doing a lot of work around the world in preparing government leaders, especially in those countries where these opportunities are not available. How do you see leaders' preparation playing a very important role, the policymakers' preparation?
Thank you, Ansel. And first of all, for that, I would like to refer to the first presentation which Gokul made, and that's a very powerful thing, that how do you prepare the society? And before that, how do you prepare the leaders responsible to those societies? And for that, the program which we are working with Intel at the global level with the 56 countries, we're trying to prepare the public sector leaders because we believe that they have the power to change. They have the power to drive the change in society and the countries. And that program has been very well received by the member countries. We have a very positive feedback. And to be very honest, when we were preparing that program, when we were co-creating those programs with Intel, I did myself the first time the course as a testing course, that how do it looks like a public sector leader. And then when it was done, again when we launched, I did second time to tell everybody the story. And whenever my Secretary General goes all around the world, she tells the Prime Minister and the President to take those courses themselves and inspire their, the public official to take those courses. But we did not stop there. We have gone a step further, that one is taking the course, but how do you feel that, the AI policy? So we are again co-creating a platform, a tool, where we'll be using AI to make AI policies, and also all other future government policies which can be put upon that tool, so that the policy makers are aware not only about the AI policy, but how to use that stack in developing the policy. And probably many of you may not be realize the importance of this, because India is far ahead in the game. But if you go around the world, as I said, 2.7 billion people are not connected to the internet. There are countries with the population of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. They do not have people. They do not have resources. And so how do you augment, how do you use the augmentation potential, which the first session was talking about, not only automation, but augmentation potential. So we are encouraging those public sector leaders and the countries and the political leadership to harness the power of AI using both augmentation and automation to ensure that their workforce, their public sector leaders are future ready for adoptions of AI. Because we are very much conscious of the fact that already there exists a digital divide in terms of the countries, within the countries, the gender and everything. If you look back the first presentation, which Maria, my colleague who is here, she made the presentations, and probably if I would have made my PPT, would have 30% common, Maria, I can tell you. So it also shows that how international organizations, even though if they are not collaborating, but how they are on the same page. So there, if you look at that augmentation and automation potential, women are going to be impacted much more. If you look at the higher income, women are going to be faced much more, the challenges. So we are also ensuring that not only mainstreaming AI for the young people, but how do we ensure the mainstreaming of AI for the women, so that the gender divide, gender gap, right now we're talking about gender pay gap, but it's going to be a gender again in AI. So how do we address that? So these are the things which we are trying to address with the countries by co-creating the solutions, and we are very confident that if the private sector, governments, international organizations come together and contribute to this journey, we can take on these challenges of AI. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Suresh. You touched upon some very important facets of policy making. I want to shift the gear now to the grassroots level innovations, real creations, local innovations. And I'm very proud of getting associated with Atal Innovation Mission, which was started 7 or 8 years back. And when I hear about the scale in India, more than 8,000 centers, is fascinating, right? And this is where the real grassroots innovation goes in the hands of villagers and people who are ready to innovate, but they don't have a place to go. So this creating this entire tinkering or innovation or maker mindset is a very important step which Government of India has taken. And we are very honored to have Dr. Chintan sitting over here. Dr. Chintan, I would request you to throw some light for the audience, how you are taking this whole philosophy of tinkering to the masses for bigger scale and bigger sustainability so that India create a role model of local innovation and it results into a wealth creation engine for the country.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. And greetings everybody, especially all the students out there. Great to see you all. I just want to say a couple of things before I answer your question. First, I have something at 12 o'clock, so I'll run right after my turn. Please don't take it as a disrespect. A second, just editorial correction. The number of labs are now 10,000, which was our mandate. So
appreciate.
So I think the first thing is that we are in the with this through the Atal Tinkering Labs. Yeah. We are in the business of adding a dimension, hitherto absent dimension to education of the hands. Yeah. So we are going from mind to mind and hands type of sort of switch, right? So that's first of all fundamentally what's happening. As a result, the flip that's expected is that somebody who would have in a normal course been a consumer of things, this table, this chair, whatever, is now beginning to think that they can also be a producer of things, right? At whatever level. These ideas may not even, so at this point, if you see Atal Tinkering Labs, it has sensitized 8 million students to this idea of design thinking, innovation, entrepreneurship, and some 1.2 million projects. Now, most of these projects will not turn into startups and products and so on, but it will tell somebody that I can build, right? So that's, I think the mindset change is the target, first and foremost. Now, we have still touched very small numbers, right? 10,000 may look like a large number. That's about 4.4% of all India's middle and high schools. So we have a long way to go. But I think what's happening is really fascinating. And bringing this conversation to sort of AI related, in the AI domain, what's happening. See, 60+ % of these schools are rural. 60+% are government. The idea of market failure, very absolutely central to building it in places where it wouldn't come about just like that. So one of the experiments that we recently did with Intel and CBSE in the AI realm, which has created a lot of excitement, and I want to say a bit about it because if those who haven't experimented with it can do so. What we've done is we've produced this compendium called AIoT, which is AI plus Internet of Things IoT plus T for tinkering, so AIoT, right? Here we have taken concepts that are taught in textbooks of science and social science from 6th class to 12th class. And for each concept, we have put out a stepwise guide for a student or teacher to learn the same concept through AI, IoT, and tinkering. It took us about maybe 8 months, Shweta's here, of labor to really produce this. But I'll give you a very quick example. For instance, somebody was talking to me about waste management. Say waste management, if you taught it as a lecture, it will take you 45 minutes to teach it in one lecture. Alternatively, if you went with AIoT, you want to teach somebody that, the fundamental concept there is biodegradable versus non-biodegradable, right? If you tell them that, look, gather all this material that you have and let's train an engine and train my machine type of thing, as to what image says biodegradable and what says it is not, and so on. Then once that machine is trained, let's build a conveyor belt. You have all these is there in their lab, right? Build a conveyor belt so that you can automatically segregate. Then you can go into economics and say, okay, if every city were to build it, how much money will it take? What is the scale? And you can teach all of this. It takes maybe 5 hours to teach it, but you have taught technology, you've taught AI, IoT, you've taught making, you've taught economics, you've taught sociology, everything you've taught, right? And we have several examples of this kind. I think when we will go to that first principles learning is when we will prepare our people, is our hypothesis. Let me pause there.
No, this is fantastic. Creating a creation economy rather than just consuming economy, this really requires grassroots level, all hands efforts which you are doing. And I am just wishing all the best for more and more scale, because as you said, India, 10,000 labs is just the start of the tipping point. Okay, good, great. Now let me shift to, because we have two international audiences here, let me shift gear more at a global level. The new issue which we are seeing, the world has started talking for last 5-6 years is around sustainability, and AI itself is a huge issue for sustainability, but what can AI do for sustainability is a bigger conversation emerging. Nature has done a research which says that globally, out of those 17 SDGs and the sub-SDG goals, roughly 79% of the SDG goals can be solved if AI is used responsibly. Now, this is a huge task for the industry, both sustainability industry and the AI and digital industry. The second very fascinating thing which we are seeing as a transition from the future of work standpoint is all jobs are eventually requiring digital skills and AI skills, but also all jobs are requiring green skills, carbon skills. Now, if you have to prepare a future with all the younger students coming over here, what can we do to really bring it together? The AI and digital at one side, sustainability and green at another side, and really give them an immersive experience. Now, this is an issue which all the education and the policymakers are thinking. And here we have an example from Singapore government, SMU, Singapore Management University, which is a higher education example. Dr. Kirutika from Singapore, she actually helped us create world's first AI for Sustainability course, which is offered in SMU. So I would like Kiru Bhattu to share some of your experience or thinking first, why you started this journey on creating a curriculum at that level on AI for sustainability, and what are you seeing now on grassroots in your classroom? What are the new conversations? Educate us on that.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, increase your volume a bit for you.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you Anshul and thank you all. I'm really sorry that I cannot join in person for the session. It looks by all means like an excellent forum for discussion around AI. So going back to sustainability, let me first start by the thought process that prompted me to develop this course in collaboration with Intel and other partners. So we are reaching a stage where we are really feeling climate change. We are really feeling the environmental impacts of all the mess that we have done to this world. And then I look at my students, and one of the things I tell them is, guys, my generation has made a mess. It's your generation's responsibility to fix this mess. And then they all roll their eyes at me, right? But it is, unfortunately or fortunately, the fact of the world that, the issues of sustainability is something that we are giving to our students, and they are the ones who are going to have to work on this. Now, how do we do this? And one of the issues that we have with sustainability is that it is a multidimensional, multidisciplinary problem. And one of the speakers earlier had been very beautifully talked about waste management. And when you talk about waste management, you don't give a 45-minute lecture, right? You give them the entire spectrum. You talk about how you would use AI, how would you use IoT. You talk about the economics of it. You talk about the social impact of it. And that is something, certainly that conversation should be made young, but it can also be made at that level of students who are in tertiary education, because by that time they've reached a little bit of a level of maturity where they can have mature and interesting conversations around this topic. So that was the main reason why I started working on tech and sustainability, to get the students to think about the problem at a bigger picture and not necessarily at the picture of, okay, fine, let's just code something. Okay? So there are a lot of interesting problems that come up. The biggest one of it is, how do we stop greenwashing? It's certainly okay to say, okay, let's build a recognizer that can use machine learning and differentiate between biodegradable and non-biodegradable. It's a fantastic project from an AI perspective. But is it really something valuable? Is it something that the students can learn from, something that is applicable? And are we simply just greenwashing it, right? So one of the things that we do at SMU is really to work with the industry partners. So in addition to organizations like Intel who provide us with the tools, the technology, the partnerships, we also work with startups who are working in the sustainability sector. So one of the partners that I'm working with right now is a partner who does waste management in commercial enterprises. So what they do is they give us real problem statements. The students talk to these partners and they try to build solutions around these problems. And that gives them a more authentic experience and also sort of justifies to them that what they're building is really something that is useful and important, and not just building something for the sake of building it. I'm going to stop right here, and over to you, Anshu.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kritaka Ramanathan, to share that concept of converting from idea to reality by engaging the local ecosystem and getting your students exposed to those problems itself is a great start. And I'm looking forward to really hearing a lot more successful case studies like this from you and your team over there. So this is great. We have Dr. William here sitting, who's representing a vocational sector, a sector which is becoming more and more important in the future of work and future of job context, because as we know, the jobs which are changing very fast, not all jobs will be catered by the higher education sector, the formal higher education sector. We talked about micro-learning and micro-certifications and all kinds of new apprenticeship models which are happening, and vocational sector plays a huge role. You are from Singapore, you are from Institute of Technical Education, which is one of the role model in vocational sector around the world. I'm kind of curious to know what get you started a few years back on the AI skilling side, and how did you build infrastructure at a college level? How did you really bring the college as well as the country ecosystem to really get energy around vocation and build AI readiness, a true AI readiness, which Singapore is now very famous for, right? So talk about that a little bit for the audience here.
Thank you, Anshu. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this honor to be here. Let me put it at the start to give you a context. What is Institute of Technical Education? First, you can visit our website, ite.edu.sg. You can have a look. We cover all the trades in Singapore. There is 190 over of them. Our whole student cohort in total, we have 35,000. Of course, this cannot be compared what India is facing. But however, we face a lot of students. All those who are students, just please raise your hand. Great. Right, I believe there's a lot. Okay, so how do we started? First, staff and educators. How many of the adults here who did not raise hand that they are students actually spend time to understand your youth? When is the last time you watched the same movie as them? When is the last time you watched the same anime? The game they play? Do you understand? So as an ITE lecturer, as an academia, we start with understanding our students. Of course, we also, not forgetting that, we also work with industry. Remember, we represent, work with 190 over trades in Singapore. So we are very happy to partner with Intel. And we are very happy to work with Intel because Intel start things with the right note. And what is the right note? Human-centric. human-centric. It must be for human. And they are futurists to think about what would be the future of human. And that is the right note. And just now there's a previous panelist saying that India is lagging behind AI race. I say it's no. You are leading in the responsible use of AI. And work on that. Show to the world, because generative AI has blinded the world of technology, go for that, but they forgot about a lot of things. I recently have to put my hand up and say, stop using deepfake and stop teaching deepfake. You have to learn how to use AI responsibly. So first thing first, get a passionate group of staff that love the youth, love the future of your country, and go teach them hands-on, minds on, hearts on. And that is actually our IT motto. So with that, how then, what's the next step? We talk about time. Seriously, I'm not an AI scientist, I'm not an AI engineer, pardon me, Ansu, I do not have a permanent HDMH, I do not have a PhD. But how can I get into the AI world? Number one, free up your time. Redesign your own job. Take ownership of your time. That's why I tell my online lecturers, don't teach the same old way of teaching. Frontal teaching is not going to work. So redesign your teaching so that you free up more time for the more important thing in equipping yourself and equipping your students. So for each individual working adults, look at your own work. Is there some way I can redesign my work in such a way I free up time? How much time? Or there's a you may half an hour a day to learn new things. For students, you have more time, stop playing your games and stop watching Netflix and YouTube. Watch something that is meaningful, that will change and build your career in the future. And that's why we are trying to tell our students, we are trade-centric, so we are telling students, your career starts now when you enter into ITE. Build your career portfolio, start your GitHub, start your LinkedIn account, show to the world that you are capable through your mini project. And I'm very proud for Tina. She have done it. She won a scholarship and proved to the world, I can do it. And that is the spirit that all students must have. And adults, that is the spirit that you must promote to your own child, your own education, right? And of course, what's next? Intel, companies like Intel is always there. They have all their ready programs. We participate with Intel AI for Youth, Intel for Future Workforce, Intel for Current Workforce. And these are ready there. And what we need to do is put it down to the ground level and impact the world. Impact your own country and move on from there. So that is, in summary, I can say, if I miss out anything, Ansu, please feel free to ask.
No, you did a fantastic job in giving a flavor of what vocation segment should be doing in terms of role modeling this human-centric, but for the trades, for the jobs, right? So that's what would be of a great value to all the policymakers and international audience over here. I know we are running out of time, so I just want 30 second to 1 minute insight from each one of you. Since you are in GPAI, what is your wish list or aspiration for GPAI to help your cause? You all have a path-breaking causes. Let me start with Gokul, because you talked about what India is doing and you have shared some great examples. So what's your wish list?
I think GPAI is like a wildfire in my view. The kind of reach and scale it has is just mind-boggling, and the fact that we are able to discuss about skilling, the fact that we are able to discuss how we can do that in a human-centric way with technology across segments, and we heard the Prime Minister talk about it. Almost, some of us felt like he's the technologist behind driving that, and it's inspiring to know that we are in a forum like this and being able to come together to drive that. So my wish list is to have more of this and make every one of the projects a mission, so that we know what we want to reach, where we want to reach, and have a maniacal focus to get there. And I think the power is, when you ask the question every time, any students, I wanted to raise my hand, because all of us are students in this transformation. And if we can keep that at the forefront of our mind, this transformation would be pretty exciting. It won't be scary, it won't be difficult, because we're all learning different aspects of it. That's what GPAI is providing for all of us.
Yeah. Dr. Kiru, I would go to you. What's your wish list?
Yeah. So one of the things that struck me about the Prime Minister's talk yesterday, and also what has been coming up quite a lot in the conversations that I've been sitting in, is the fact that AI has to be responsible. And when we talk about responsible AI, we speak about things like biases, we speak about trust, transparency, which are all very important, yes, I agree. But one of the things that we should also talk about is the environmental impact of AI. And that comes in many places, right? So, for example, if you are building an AI model, are you building an AI model which is pre-trained? That is certainly more efficient, has a less carbon footprint than something that is probably something that you have to train from scratch. So are you doing that? Where are you putting your AI model? Are you putting this in the cloud? Are you putting it somewhere that is more energy efficient? Are you using infrastructure that has been developed in a green way? So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And I think GPAI is a very good forum to start these conversations around the environmental impact and environmental responsibility around AI. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ramanathan. William, from your standpoint, what's your wish list?
I must commend that GPAI have started correctly. You get the future of AI here, students. So I will suggest that besides hearing government, policymakers, industry, give a voice to the student. Get the student leaders and let them share the perspective in the forum, maybe as a panelist. Get them view, because they are the future of what we are doing. We are investing in their future. And students, you must be very comforted to know that there are so many people that are interested about you. So please change the world for the better.
Okay.
So have a voice for the students.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Suresh, you heard all the wish list, and you are representing multilateral and the government side, and in that sense, the GPI and the global coalition side. Your wish list.
Thank you, Ansul, and I have a long list to the West. First of all, I will say that GPI is doing a great job, but world needs a much bigger and collaborative platform. So we need a World AI Council where all the countries, private sector, public sector, young minds, young people are equal partners, so that we are able to move away from competition of countries, competition of the private sector. If you see, there is a lot of competition in Silicon Valley, if you see the recent event. So moving the world from competition to collaboration for a very safe and secure future. The second West list, which I picked up from the Prime Minister's address yesterday, that how do you adopt the India's AI mission to a global AI mission, where you bring the compute power, where you bring the capacity building together for 8 billion people. That's my second mission, which I will give it to the international organizations. The next one is that, if you recall the Vishal Sikka talking about that there are 100,000 people only who understand AI out of 8 billion people. Rest are doing the advocacy and talking about AI, even without knowing what exactly behind the AI and what are the processes. Increase that number from 100,000 to at least 25% of the 8 billion people who really understand to make this world safe and secure. And lastly, I will say that have many more TINA which Intel has produced. Find out TINA from all across the world. TINA is a symbol of women empowerment, gender disparity, which I talked about. TINA is a symbol of using the compute power. TINA is a symbol of using the young minds and the young power. So have many more TINA each and every corner of the world who can take on the future of the humanity, who can take on the future in terms of sustainability, which we are talking about. I'm coming from the COP28 from Dubai, so I know how much young people are responsible, how young people can deliver, how young people can contribute for making this planet safe, secure for all the future generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you for laying out a good blueprint, collaborate, not just compete, and really create multiple TINAs around the world by making AI more equitable, more accessible, more responsible, and more sustainable. So thank you so much. I don't know whether we have time for just one question quick. No? Okay. So connect with all the speakers offline, and I'm grateful to all of you for sparing your time and being a good patient listener. It's very good motivation to see hall totally jam-packed and multiple people standing. That means the panel and we did a good job. I hope so. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.